On today's show, AJ Preller of the Padres were reported a while ago to be in the workings of doing a grand Soto-like trade. What exactly could that even look like?
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Wednesday, December 31st. Happy New Year's Eve to you all. As always, I'm your host with sometimes the most, Javier Reyes. I've been covering this team for 6 years now, soon to be 7, not just for this podcast, but various other outlets, including justbaseball.com, Chief, Mug them. Today's episode, guys, is brought to you by FanDuel. Before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Be sure to go check that out. And remember, you're listening to the Locked On Padres podcast. And guess what? Locked On, the #1 sports podcast network in the business. Just in case you clicked on this video accidentally, don't worry. Like, we're a reputable place over here. You know what I mean? On today's episode, guys, though, we're going to be talking about some trade ideas for the Padres, some that you, the listeners, sent in. And if you haven't, please do send a comment in the comment section of this video or any other video with any trade ideas or trade suggestions or trade themes, maybe I could call it. Like, maybe you just want to say, hey, I think we really need this position that no one's talking about. Whatever you think. Maybe a certain type of player, whatever you think. But first, before we get into that, I just want to quickly talk about some news that came out with the Padres that I think is at least somewhat relevant. And that is that the Padres signed Blake Hunt to a minor league deal. He is a catcher. This is a little bit of a big deal, but only in the sense that I think it's just a nice kind of insurance, dare I say. Just because if Luis Campusano, who honestly is looking like he might be the guy that the team goes to as the backup potentially for Freddie Fermin, I think that he could eventually, you know, be an interesting sort of player. Like, there is a world in which he learns how to hit and becomes something, but instead it's probably unlikely that Campusano is going to do that, right? He loves raking in the minor leagues and then he gets called up and he stinks. We've talked about this on this show for frankly like 4 or 5 years now. We've been talking about Luis Campusano and how much of a disappointment he's been. So little bit of a signing there. Maybe he ends up becoming the official backup. Well, I think it's one of those things that we'll see in spring training. Like if someone breaks out or someone breaks through, if they end up liking him, we'll see. He hasn't exactly had a great or illustrious career at all, but he is somewhat young, right? And he's had some success in AAA before, so I wouldn't be shocked if they give him a shot. And hey, they did give Gavin Sheets a shot, right? Signed him to a minor league, you know, kind of little deal, and then he ended up being a much better player for the Padres. So maybe they know what they're doing, and I'm curious to see if that's it. Right? Maybe do they still go out? Maybe they make a trade for a catcher that nobody sees coming. Maybe they sign a Victor Caratini to a small deal. Maybe. But I think that it is maybe a little bit of a sign that they're just going to be like, all right, going to have a little bit of a competition for that second spot in spring training, see how it goes. We just want to have some insurance because we don't want to have this situation where Luis Campusano, a horrible defender and a horrible batter, and we have no other plans when Fermin the day off or what have you, right? So hopefully the Padres can figure that out. But let's get into some of the trade stuff. And first, I want to talk about more broadly with the trades. All right. And what I mean by that is you're going to hear a lot of people say, oh, the Padres can't pull off this. The Padres can't pull off that. Frankly, from myself included, right? But when it comes to a lot of trades, I think people just always forget, and particularly in baseball, I don't see this as much with other sports, that everyone's like, okay, well, this prospect will get you this, or this player will get you these prospects. We don't actually know. And teams sometimes settle for less, or teams have different valuations of players, prospects, and major league players that are completely different than what you see on Baseball America, right? So that is worth mentioning. I will say, though, that there are some players that have been attached to the Padres that I just want to get out of the way that I think are completely unrealistic, right? I think Hunter Green is completely unrealistic, right? And Tarik Skubal, I think, are completely unrealistic. I get those comments a lot, especially on Skubal. I understand that Skubal has, like, you know, this team that probably doesn't want to pay him as much as he's going to get paid. I get that. But for me, Skubal, there's just too many other teams that can offer better things. And this is not the A's or a really, really, really small market team. And I think that they're going to have some leverage in trade negotiations. So I do not see Skubal being moved. Hunter Green, I don't even understand why he's been rumored to be getting traded, because he's super good and he's young under team control. And if I'm not mistaken, under a pretty great contract. So I don't understand. Yeah, he's on a 6-year, $53 million contract. And last year he had a 276. Year before that, a 275. He's really good at just 25 years old. I don't understand why the Reds would want to trade him. And if they do, by the way, that is the problem with baseball and not inherently the Dodgers, right? The fact that the Reds literally have him on a cheap contract but still want to save money, that would be insane, right? This really young pitcher. And I don't think that those guys, I think Freddie Peralta is another player because he's got another year of control, I'm pretty sure, as well. Freddie Peralta, I don't think that's a player that the Padres could necessarily acquire either. Although I do admit that he's a little bit more realistic than the Skubal and Hunter Green, only because slightly older. And I think that Milwaukee's weird and they really would shed payroll at any given opportunity, right? So we'll see how that goes. But I think that there are some guys like a Pablo Lopez, right? The Pablo Lopez is interesting because the Minnesota Twins are dumping everything, right? Byron Buxton is probably going to get traded too. That team is doing the classic, we're too poor. We only made, $400 million in profit last year. We got to dump everything. They're heading for a rebuild for sure. And they've been trading guys, right? They traded a bunch of guys at the deadline. Frankly, I don't remember who exactly, but they've been trading a bunch of guys that I think that Pablo Lopez absolutely will be one of them. Is there a world in which Preller offers Ethan Salas? Yeah, I could see that. I don't want him to. I really want to hang on to Ethan Salas, but I could at least see it being a little bit more realistic that maybe that's all that the Twins need. I think another interesting player, honestly, for the Padres, Mackenzie Gore gets brought up a lot. I don't see any way in which he goes back to the Padres. I think that he maybe didn't love that he got traded from the team. I think that a player that actually could be really interesting in terms of like these top ones is Kris Bubic of the Kansas City Royals. For those who don't know, Kris Bubic is like a really fascinating player because he's had this long stretch of a prospect arc, I should say, right? Both him and some other guys, Brady Singer, right? The Royals drafted a lot of pitchers a few years back, right? And they've been prospects for such a long time, and they've only recently started to show something. But with their contract with Seth Lugo, with the fact that they have Brady Singer, or that they had, I should say, Brady Singer, I think there's a world in which that he could get moved, but he was so excellent this last year that I don't know exactly. Is it sustainable what he did last year? 2.55 ERA. He had a fifth with 2.89. He kind of had his breakout year in 116 innings. Maybe he's available. I don't know. But I'm just bringing up these players only because these are top tier options that at least I think are realistic. I do not think Hunter Green and Tarik Skubal are realistic. Pablo Lopez, to an extent, not as much either. But they have been attached to the Padres at least a little bit. Right. So is it possible that they go out and get someone like that? Maybe. I think Edward Cabrera is a guy that's pretty possible as well. Mitch Keller potentially is a little bit possible, right? Or wait, was it Mitch Keller traded? Hold on. Let me just check this really quickly. Was Mitch Keller already traded? I totally forgot if he was. No, he's still on the Pirates. I think those guys, if they really are potentially getting traded and they were put on ESPN a while back, I believe it was Jeff Passan. Yeah, Jeff Passan and Kylie McDaniel did an article where they listed like most likely players to get traded from each team. And again, there was a lot of players that were linked to the Padres. Everyone from Brady Singer to Sandy Alcantara to Edward Cabrera, who I really like, Mitch Keller, right? All these sort of guys. And I think that while they are higher end options, I do think it's possible, if the reports are true, that what I led the show with today, that AJ Preller company, that he's working on stuff that is going to look like the Juan Soto trade. But I don't think that means an individual trade. I think it just means he might have an offseason that is really, really crazy. And considering they brought in Song, and especially that they brought in Michael King, I could see that being a possibility. But man, guys, I know it sounds like a whole lot of nothing, but I really have no idea where this man is going to go, because I never do, and no one ever does. No one gets the Padres right. Everyone said we're broke and we're going to have to sign guys for 1 year, $2 billion. And then they signed Michael King and Song the same day. And they're probably still not done. But y'all, before we continue talking about that, let me just talk to you really quickly about our friends over at FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better, because every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. It's your official pregame limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. That's right, every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. All sorts of stuff. It's really great. New sort of deals every single time. It's going to be really, really fun. Bunch of bonuses and boosts and surprises. And right before the games and weekend starts. So a little bit extra energy for your fun Friday, I guess some would say. Remember, before tip-off, check the FanDuel app one more time and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little bit of basketball, a little bit of action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. And just like that, everybody, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, the only show that may be better than the Padres themselves. Let's keep talking about trade stuff. I think that another thing that is worth bringing up when it comes to trades is that the Padres could go after players that we didn't even know about. Right? Remember this deadline? No one was really talking about Freddie Fermin, and he got traded. Everyone's talking about Byron Buxton, doesn't get traded. Although I do think that he could get traded this offseason. But you get what I'm saying, right? And I think that Preller, with the constraints that they have, that might be the best course of action, right? And I think that I really, really do believe, from what I've heard, and I could be wrong because it is AJ Preller and the Padres, their number one trade asset is Ethan Salas. And then they've got Cruz Schoolcraft, right, who I like, and then Cash Mayfield. But those guys aren't top 100 prospects yet, or at least what it seems like. They could be over time. Right? They might have breakout years. This happens with the Padres in their farm system all the time, where nobody talks about their guys, and then all of a sudden, every prospect looks just like, oh my God, Jackson Merrill, he's top 20 now. It happens a lot. But for right now, I think that Ethan Salas is probably his best trade chip. But from what I've heard, it just feels like, from what I've heard, that he's denied a lot of offers for him. And I think it's because he knows. I think he knows that this dude has a really, really high floor. Go check out my episode I did with Armley a couple weeks ago talking about Padres prospects. We talked a lot about Ethan Salas and how I don't like the naysayers and everybody just abandoning ship. Everybody freaked out when this guy was 17 years old and he got signed, and everyone put him immediately in the top 10 of prospects. And because he didn't light the world on fire, when he's still, again, let me remind you, again, I must remind you every single time we talk about Ethan Salas, he is still just 19 years old. And because he didn't light the world on fire, everybody's out. And I'm like, this isn't catching progression and arcs for the catching prospects is so different than other positions. Right. And I just think that this guy is going to be an otherworldly defender, an otherworldly locker room presence, and all that sort of stuff. He's got leadership vibes. I think there's a reason why Preller has been reluctant to trade him. But let's talk about some of your guys' responses and questions regarding some trades that the Padres could make. And I think that there's a bunch of different ones, right? First of all, there was someone who actually brought up on a video recently at Mike Castleberry80 who said, this popping up 2 years later, knowing how this absolutely did nothing is kind of funny, in reference to the Padres trading for Rich Hill and G-Man Choi and Garrett Cooper and Scott Barlow. I just wanted to bring that up because it is funny, and it is true that while I do love emphasizing the need to go and do some under the radar moves, that's not a guarantee to work. And I'm not saying that always is going to work. And I'm not saying that going out and trading for a big time player is a mistake. It's just where I think currently standing, you want to get some flexibility with your roster. But again, just wanted to bring that up because, man, that did not work. But again, that team was so cursed. 2023 Padres were easily, and I mean easily, the worst team of this Padres era that I covered. Like, it was nightmare inducing. Just watching everybody take walks and no one drive anybody in. It was historic levels of choke job by the Padres in 2023. But we got a bunch of comments from a few weeks back. One from Darren Michael 7978. The Padres Mets trade. I got an idea. He says, trade Mason Miller, Nick Pivetta, and Ramon Laureano, and in exchange receive Jonathan, Carson Bench, Jet Williams, Brandon Spratt, Jacob Reimer, and Jonathan Santucci. There's no way. There's no way. And here's why there's no way. I like these prospects. I like Sprout. I really like Jonathan. I don't mind getting some depth pieces in this farm. I do not think you can also give up. You have to take out one of the players in this. Nick Pivetta, right? And Ramon Laureano, if you only trade those guys, I could see it. If you only trade Mason Miller and, like, say, I don't know, a Josh Mears or something, some other prospect that they have, so an extra piece, an accompanying piece, right? Maybe you get rid of Yuki Matsui if you want to free up a little bit of money. I don't think that any team will want him, but who knows? Then I could see that making sense. But Mason Miller is too valuable in an asset, especially when they just gave up a top 5 prospect in baseball and their best prospect in Leo DeVries. So I do not see that happening. But again, I have been on board for the trading of the trade with the Mets, the trade partnership. I am really a big fan of that because I do think that there is some common ground there with the Mets and Padres. I think it could be fun, and I'm really all in on getting some play role flexibility. If they move Pivetta and Monahan and they get in exchange a Senga and a Jonathan or something along those lines, I think that would be absolutely like a quadruple win for the Padres. I really do. Go check out the episode I did with Ryan Finkelstein from last week on Christmas talking about that. It was a lot of fun. But he also has another trade idea. He said the Red Sox get shortstop third baseman Xander Bogaerts, right? $64 million over 8 years, and the Padres get Connolly early in return. For those who don't know, that is one of the I think the Red Sox prospects. I don't think he's one of their top ones, but he is, at least according to just MLB.com, their 4th ranked prospect. There's no way in a million years this makes sense because for one thing, they have Trevor Story. They would much rather, I think they still have Trevor Story. They would much rather try to get him back, right? Get him back to being a useful player, which by the way, he kind of was, right? Low key, Trevor Story was not bad. 741 OPS, played some good defense, hit 25 home runs, right? That's not bad. They're not going to trade this for this guy back. They're just not. And frankly, I don't see any team in baseball trade for Xander Bogaerts because of that 11-year contract. If it wasn't as long and meaty, I think you could actually offload him. But I bring up this trade also to bring up that I am not a fan of getting rid of players and attaching in a case and attaching a prospect. This is what was brought up a lot during the Eric Hosmer days. I am a huge opponent of trading away players and attaching prospects to them just to get out of the money. I just think that like you just got to try and turn Bogaerts into something. And by the way, I'll keep saying it. This will be one of my takes all offseason. I'm going to keep repeating this, right? I have my Salas take, right? But Xander Bogaerts is going to be, and that is, I still think the guy had 3.2 wins above replacement last year. He had a good walk rate, right? He was hitting the ball a little bit harder. I think there's a world in which he can be a 4-win player and just be solid. We're going to keep talking about the rest of the offseason. And I do not think that it's worth getting rid of a player like that. Not right now, because you'd still probably have to eat some money too. There's no team out there that's going to want to take that trade, right? I just don't see it. I don't see it. But his last trade idea that he brings up is Tarik Skubal, and in exchange, giving to the Tigers Ethan Salas, Cruz Schoolcraft, Brandon Sprout, and Jacob Reimer. Obviously, this would be following the trade that he mentioned with the Mets after you received Brandon Sprout in return. I think that this package isn't too bad, right? I will say that I think it's actually a pretty decent package for Tarik Skubal. But man, that would be like kind of unprecedented for the Padres to trade all those guys away with the base ability, blah, 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 get these prospects back and then reuse them again. I don't know. I just don't know if they're going to be able to do that. But in fairness, it's a little bit similar. There is some precedent, right? They traded away Juan Soto and Trent Grisham, got some prospects in return, right? And one of those prospects they then used to get Dylan Cease. But I think Skubal is just on another level. This is a 2-time Cy Young winner, guys. 2-time Cy Young winner. That being said, if he pulled it off, I can't say it would be the most shocking thing ever because it is the Padres and there is nothing that AJ Preller can't do. And just like that, everybody, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, thriving and vibing as always, talking about some trade stuff because why not? Frankly, I think it's fun to talk about trade stuff. I want to talk about one more comment that we got. Or actually, not a comment, but there was one from NBC San Diego. Derek Togerson proposed a trade. He said the Padres would get Brian Bayo and outfielder Nelly Taylor in exchange for Jake Cronenworth and left-handed pitcher Wandy Peralta and cash. This is not horrible. And I recommend everyone go check out the article if you want to check that out. I think that Bayo is an impossibly hard pitcher to evaluate, but I really don't hate this trade at all. I don't. You know why? Here's his innings pitched every single year. 2023, 157, 24, 162, 25, 166. He's 26 years old. Maybe there's a possibility that he gets better, but he has been a ground ball low hard hit rate, just kind of getting through batters as your fourth pitcher, that's money, man. And the Red Sox, right? Do they have any desire for a player like Jay Cronenworth? That's the only problem with this trade, right? I think that the money's totally fine. I do, and I do think that teams of high value Jay Cronenworth a little bit higher than people realize. But second base, right? Romy Gonzalez. Do they just want to go out with that? Do they just want to keep Romy Gonzalez because he had a decent year this past year? Although I don't think it's sustainable. I think he had just a little bit of a lucky year. It kind of came out of nowhere, but they do have some second base issues. Unless are they moving Marcelo Mayer over to second base for some reason? I don't know. I don't think so. I think they're going to keep him there. You know, they've got Roman Anthony. They've got a lot of good prospects, right? They love Wilyer Abreu. They love Roman. They love Mayer. They just traded for Wilson Contreras to go to first base. I kind of like this trade, man. I kind of like the trade. Wandy Peralta, not too bad of a reliever, and the Red Sox kind of need relief pitching. They were kind of carried by the fact that Aroldis Chapman inexplicably had like another insanely good season at his age. Aroldis Chapman might be a Hall of Famer, man. He really might be. And another thing, just a quick thing. Aroldis Chapman, one of the great athletes of the 21st century. How do you consistently always, like, your thing is throwing 100, like every pitch, and you've never had a major injury with your arm? Like, that's a freak achievement of athleticism. But this is the type of trade that Togerson proposes that is not sexy. It's not going to be nearly that exciting, but you get that contract off your books, not the $11 million, but more the years left that you have at Jay Cronenworth, and you move someone into second base. I don't know who they could get necessarily at second base, right? That's the issue. And obviously, I imagine that Nelly Taylor, that's just like a little bit of an add-on. I actually don't know if you'd able to get that, frankly. That is a Red Sox prospect. He hasn't done too much, right? I don't think he's even one of their top prospects, if I'm not mistaken. But I just, I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know what can happen here, because then I don't know who plays second base for the Padres. That's the only hiccup in the trade. But again, maybe that's where Preller comes in. Maybe he's thinking about who to replace. Maybe Song. Maybe our guy Song is going to be immediately placed into the second base position. I don't know if I'd love that, because again, I think people are undervaluing Jay Cronenworth sometimes and what he brings to the table. But I wouldn't hate it. But getting a pitcher like that, letting him cook with Niebla, maybe he can make him even better. And at worst, he could be an innings eater with a high 3s, low 4s ERA. And if that's your fourth starter, that rotation's money, man. I'm telling you, that rotation's money. It's absolutely money. Losing Wandy would hurt a little bit in terms of the bullpen depth, but I would not hate that whatsoever. And I think those are the type of trades that I would love if you guys, the listeners, submit, right? I think that the big blockbusters are fun, and you can send those too, and I'd love to talk about them. But these are the type of trades that I think are really, really interesting, because it would conserve a lot of the flexibility for the Padres going forward and wouldn't blow up what remains of their farm system, and then just kind of doing the same thing that they've been doing for years that hasn't always seen sustained success, right? I know that these past 2 years have been good, but I do think that the Mason Miller trade, there's a world in which that comes back to bite them. I do. I think that DeVries, right? Like, I think if people want to talk about Tarik Skubal, you want to get Skubal. If you package DeVries, I think that they become one of the front runners for Tarik Skubal, who I still don't think is going to be, it's not a guarantee that he's getting traded, but I think they become a front runner for all these other top pitchers that are looking to be traded. If they still have Leo DeVries. I really do believe that. I do. But that's kind of it for just the basics of the trades, guys. That's it for the basic trade ideas for the Padres. I have one that I'm still not giving up on, man. I'm still not giving up. I brought this up years ago, and I'm all in once again. Ryan Mountcastle of the Baltimore Orioles is one of my top trade targets for the Padres, because this is such cheap power that is waiting to be tapped into. He doesn't get any playing time, and I understand that he had a really bad year. A little bit unlucky, though. But this is a guy who once hit 33 home runs, and he does not play consistently, right? He does not get nearly as many plate appearances. He doesn't get the chance. He got better defensively at first base. I just think he could be looking for a new home. And I think you would have to give up literally next to nothing to get him. I really, really do. I do. Maybe can you get another player from the Orioles? You want to make it a multiplayer trade, maybe get one of their prospects in return, right? Is Adley Rutschman a guy that the Padres really want to go for? Maybe they give up Ethan Salas. We talked about this a few weeks back. Give up Ethan Salas, and then you get Rutschman. Rutschman and Fermin, not bad, right? And then maybe you can have Mountcastle in there. There you go. You have your DH or your first baseman to go along with Sheets. Not the worst idea in the world. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I really wouldn't. But my main thing is Ryan Mountcastle because I think he costs next to nothing. And I still believe there's a lot of power in there. He's shown it before. And he's 28 years old. You could do worse, right? I just think that that's a guy that doesn't have any potential in Baltimore. And we saw what the Padres were able to do with Gavin Sheets this year. Maybe you let him focus on exclusively playing DH, move Sheets over to first base, whatever, and maybe you could get something, right? The guy's barrel hard hit stuff is really good. And I've mentioned a lot this offseason that the Padres need a power bat, and flawed power is still something that could absolutely help. Gavin Sheets doesn't walk too much. He's not a good defensive player. Ryan Mountcastle doesn't walk too much, strikes out way too much. But the Padres need power so badly and have enough contact on base oriented hitters that you can afford to have someone in your lineup that's going to be super strikeout heavy as long as he hits for power. And if you're giving up nothing because you want to conserve some of your farm, help it rebuild, and maybe gear up for the future, guys. Okay? This team isn't dead after this year, right? You can still hope to build for the future. You can compete now and build for the future at the same time. I think Mountcastle is a worthy flyer. I really do, and I stand by it. And if he's bad, it could happen. I've been wrong on guys like this before, right? Michael Conforto, I was really high on. Total mess. Even the Dodgers couldn't salvage him, right? And frankly, I think that injury he sustained before his free agency period probably did him in. But I just think a flawed power bat absolutely plays in this Padres lineup. And I know I'm going to get comments saying, dude, he's not very good. He had an 83 W. Well, the comments won't say this, but he hit 250 last year, right? He had a 286 on base. He's never had an on base higher than 228, aside from his rookie year in 2020, but that's different. It was a shortened season. I respond to you by saying, I understand that. But the other guys that you're probably bringing up, Pete Alonso, they can't afford Pete Alonso, or other big time power bats, right? I can't think of another one right now exactly. Let's see here. Who do we got here? Ketel Marte, people might bring up. He's a second baseman, right? Just get rid of Jake Cronenworth and trade for Ketel Marte, right? Luis Robert. I think that those guys, the price tag is really a lot higher. I think in theory, for those type of players. And I just don't know if the Padres are going to be able to afford it. Everyone wants those guys. Not everyone wants a Ryan Mountcastle. So I trust AJ Preller, and I trust the rest of you to give me your best ideas for trade stuff. But I really do think that this is going to be such a fun offseason to keep talking about rumors and whatnot. And I think that short-term type of options might be the direction that they go, especially with the impending lockout. That's probably going to happen next year, right? So are they going to go trade for someone that they have under team control for a couple years? I don't know, right? And are they going to sign someone for multi-years? I don't know either, right? Remember that Michael King has opt-outs, and I think that what's going to happen is he's going to ball out and then opt out and get paid elsewhere, which is fine. That's the constraints that the Padres are in right now. But overall, that's kind of what I see. And there's so many guys that are still out there. I promise you, there are other ways to win. And frankly, Mark Vientos, we've talked about him on the show a lot. I still believe in that guy too, right? The Padres have a lot of money wrapped up already in a lot of star players. So at this point, it might behoove them to keep some of their depth, keep some young controllable players, and instead go for guys like Mountcastle, go for guys like Vientos as reclamation projects that could work. It literally has happened these past 2 years with the Padres, from Profar and Kyle Higashioka and not Solano, but Gavin Sheets, right? They've done it before. Maybe they can do it again, or at least I'd rather do that instead of trading everything, signing everything, and then we're the Angels for the next 10 years. That's what I prefer. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you because, frankly, I'm an idiot, according to the comments. So maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Let me know what trade targets you might be interested in as well. Friday's episode, we're going to be talking about free agency. I'm going to have the virtual background behind me. No longer the other stuff and the baseball thing. And for the video listeners, go check it out. We have a new friend here, an exclusive that I got at Comic-Con by Fernando Tatis Jr. figure. It looks fantastic, man. I mean, really fantastic. I might bring him out right now for the end of the video. Look at this. Look at this guy. Look how sick this is, man. Oh, man, it's great. This is really bad for audio listeners, but you get my point. Go check that out. And we'll be having some other people on the show, especially next week, to talk about any other rumors that, materialize, especially if it's, say, the Reds, right? If maybe that starts to pick up. And our guy, Akamoto, talked about him on Monday's episode. Go check out my thoughts on that. I think he would be great. I've also heard from people who are much smarter than me at baseball that the guy is legitimately really good. So if that happens, we'll see. That's expected to be, he's got a deadline of January 4th. So we'll probably be hearing about that. I can't wait. Guys, get excited, man. We're going to be in 2026. And that's right. Oh my God. Next episode will be the first of 2026. That'll be a lot of fun. But until that next time, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. My Fire Faithful homies, take care.